Hello, my friends. Today's question is, what is Aqal Haiwani, which can be translated as animal intellect? I will talk about it in little more detail in a while, but let's deal with the question first. The question is, what is Aqal Haiwani, that is animal intellect, and what is its relationship with instincts? Let's try to understand this. The term Aqal Haiwani is an Arabic and Urdu phrase, and it can be translated as animal intellect or animal reason. This concept, Aqal Haiwani or animal intellect, often refers to the basic instinctual intelligence or natural instincts that animals possess, as opposed to the higher rational intellect attributed to humans, which is often referred to as Aqal Insani or human intellect. So we are talking about two terms here, Aqal Haiwani and Aqal Insani, animal intellect vis-a-vis human intellect. The term Aqal Haiwani highlights the difference between the instinct-driven behavior of animals and the reasoned, reflective thought processes of humans. Let me repeat that. The term Aqal Haiwani, it highlights the difference between the instinct-driven behavior of animals, that is what we call Aqal Haiwani, and the reasoned, reflective thought processes of humans. We call it Aqal Insani or human intellect. So I hope you must have understood the difference between animal intellect and human intellect. My friends, it's very important to understand this very delicate difference between the two. Let me repeat. Aqal Haiwani or the animal intellect, it refers to instinct-driven behavior of animals. So what we understand from this term is that animal behavior is instinct-driven, whereas the human beings have human intellect, and that is based on reasoning, reflective thought process of humans, which is absent in animals. Let's try to understand this difference between animals and humans through some verses of Quran. The first verse is from chapter 7 of Quran, verse 179, in which Allah says, Ulaika kal an'ami bal hum adallu ulaika humul ghafilun. The translation: they are like cattle, rather they are even more astray. It is they who are heedless. This verse is addressing those who have hearts with which they do not understand, eyes with which they do not see, and ears with which they do not hear. The comparison to cattle is to illustrate that such people, despite their human faculties, are oblivious to guidance and the truth, making them worse than animals that act according to their natural instincts. I hope this explanation further highlights the fact that Aqal Haiwani or animal intellect is actually driven by instincts. Let's look at one more verse from Quran. This is from chapter 25, verse 44. First, Arabic. Am tahsabu anna aksarahum yasma'una aw ya'qilun in hum illa kal an'am bal hum adallu sabila. Translation: or do you think that most of them listen or reason? They are not except like cattle. Rather, they are even more astray in their way. My friends, this verse of Quran also highlights the same thing which I just narrated in the context of the other verse, that is chapter 7, 179. Let me repeat. This verse is addressing those who have hearts with which they do not understand, eyes with which they do not see, and ears with which they do not hear. The comparison to cattle is to illustrate that such people, despite their human faculties, are oblivious to guidance and the truth, making them worse than animals that act according to their natural instincts. I hope these two verses have further clarified that the human behavior is different from the animals. Rather, I should say that Aqal Haiwani or animal intellect is different from the human intellect. The animal intellect or Aqal Haiwani is instinct-driven behavior of animals, whereas the human intellect refers to the reasoned and reflective thought processes of humans. After having understood this difference between humans and animals, how about revisiting the concept of our true personality, our actual personality, that is soul? The actual personality or soul is a spiritual being which is a non-matter, complete personality or entity. This was created in the permanent word. The Quran terms this spiritual being as nafs. These personalities, I mean we, us, or nufus, were put to slumber after the covenant with God in the permanent word. And this covenant has been clearly stated in Quran chapter 7 verse 172. These souls or nufus are brought from that order of actual existence and attached to the hearts of the physical bodies in the womb of the mothers after around 120 days from conception. Let's understand this spiritual being or soul little further. The soul has three kinds of concepts. 1. Moral concepts. 2. Aesthetical concepts. 3. Mathematical concepts. These three concepts actually constitute the soul. But we should always keep in mind that our test, I mean the soul's test, is confined to the moral concepts only. We are not under test with regards to the other two concepts, that is, aesthetical concepts and mathematical concepts. I hope you find this repetition useful, because whenever we talk about the grand scheme of God, it's absolutely important to have a very clear concept about God and about ourselves. Because unless we understand these two master keys of the grand scheme of God, we cannot comprehend other matters related to this whole scheme. Before I close, let me say a few words about the body as well, which is our carrier. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this body is a commonality between us and the animals. So let's talk about body briefly. Our body is also a creation of God and is provided to the actual personality, that is, the soul, my true self. It is provided to that actual personality as a carrier for a limited time to use in this world. The body acts on the principle of survival of the self and survival of the species, just like other animals. For the survival of the self, the human beings eat, drink, and make shelter. For the survival of the species, the male and female act instinctively, mate and procreate. Let me also mention that the term nafs amara in the Quran refers to this sexual instinct of the body. My friends, I hope this description was helpful in terms of understanding the core difference, the real difference between Aqal Haiwani, that is, animal intellect, vis-a-vis Aqal Insani, that is, human intellect. Thank you.